It fell in my trash. It's finally time for my mid-year wrap up. No, crap, freak out. That's my intro. Mid-year book freakout tag, mid-year book, what is it called? The mid-year book freakout tag, whatever. Let's get right to the questions. I am, first of all, way behind on my reading goals for the year. I think I'm like 17 books behind. Maybe my reading goal for this year was a little ambitious. It's a little unrealistic, possibly, you know, for accounting for life happening. But I am pretty happy with where I'm at so far in the year as far as the quantity of books, but more so the quality of books I've read. I have been very happy with the books I've read this year. Number one, the best book I've read so far. I don't have any of these books with me. All Quiet on the Western Front. I would say this is easily the best book I've read all year, and I think you can tell by my annotation tabs. This is set in World War I. It is from the point of a German soldier who is looking at the war and how war is sold to the youth of the times, the ones that are being convinced to go fight for a fight that is not their own. This is beautifully written. I mean, beautifully written. I have not read a war book that had this much stunning prose and imagery. The message was amazing. It is the biggest, greatest anti-war book I've ever come across. The characters were likable and relatable, and it was raw and real. It was stunningly beautiful and devastating all at the same time. So I really highly recommend, even if you don't like war books, check this one out if you don't read any other war book. The best sequel that I've read so far. Okay, a couple of caveats. I don't read series. I don't read books in a series. I don't like the commitment. It stresses me out. Also, I find it very difficult to find a series that can keep my attention for very long. So there's one. Second caveat, I have tried to read a series. I read the first book in the series earlier this year, and the second book in the series, I got part of the way through. I got like 3/4 of the way through, and then my hold expired on Libby and they took it back. So I've read it mostly. And that is The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu from the Three Body Problem series. I know it's not called the Three Body Problem series. I'll put it up here. But the Three Body Problem is the first in the series. The Dark Forest is the second. And I got most of the way through it. So it is the best sequel I've read so far because it is the only sequel I have read so far. Mostly. Okay, new release you haven't read yet, but you want to. I don't pay attention to new releases, like at all. The only awareness I have of them is from other booktubers talking about new releases because my favorite genre is classics, and a new release isn't a classic. It may become one, but it is not a classic yet. So my awareness of them, very minimal. However, I Googled books for 2023 just for this freakout tag, and actually 2 of them sound really cool. I definitely think I want to read these. That is The Shadow of Perseus. Actually 3 books. I'm sorry. The Shadow of Perseus, Clytemnestra, and The Water Outlaws. Now, 2 of them, Perseus and Clytemnestra, are Greek retellings. Now, I have a thing for Greek myths. I have a thing for Greek retellings, but I don't like them in like modern settings, and I don't like them when they are like so far removed that you would never have any idea that it's a Greek retelling unless like you specifically read it, and then it makes sense. But like, I mean the actual like Greek myth. Like, tell me the myth in novel form with details, because a lot of mythology is like like the written paragraphs that you can find are like this long. So like, use your imagination and build out the Greek myth. Tell me about these characters that don't get a lot of page time necessarily. And I also really love how many retellings there have been, rewritings of female characters in Greek myths, because they, especially unless they're one of the goddesses, they don't get a lot of background in their mythology usually. So like Circe, one of my favorite books of all time now, Absolutely loved it. Pat Barker, the Women of Troy, the Girls of Troy, was really, really good as well. So The Shadow of Perseus and Clytemnestra sound really good. The Water Outlaws also sounds really good. Can I remember the synopsis of any of these? No, because I just Googled them and was like, oh, those sound good. So anyway, those are my 3 look forward to anticipated reads. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't know. I don't have, like I just said, those are new releases. If none of those are out yet, which I didn't even pay attention to, then that is my most anticipated read. How about that? Ooh, my biggest disappointment. A Farewell to Arms. I genuinely thought I was going to love this, or at least get a lot out of it and think it was a literary, maybe not masterpiece, but something very literary worthy of note. I really didn't. I didn't like it. In fact, I actively disliked it. I have a whole video with the Farewell to Arms and the Game of Tomes read along and the response video, so go check those out if you're interested. I will try to remember to leave links below. I'm not good at remembering stuff though, so if it's down there, it's down there. I don't like Hemingway. I don't like his writing. I love Old Man and the Sea. I've read For Whom the Bell Tolls, and I liked it better than this, but I didn't love it. And this just, I annotated. I get it. I get it. And listening to the Game of Tomes live discussion about it and seeing other people's takes on it, their impressions, their comments, definitely made me appreciate more about it. But I still didn't like it, and I fully expected. So here's the thing. My brother read this in high school. This is actually his copy. He hated it. He and I have like opposite reading tastes though, so that's partly why I also expected to really enjoy it. And so it was very disappointing that I did not really like it. I think I gave it 2 stars. His writing is not only sparse, it's annoyingly repetitive. The very first page, look at that. I mean, I just started drawing graphs of like connecting lines of the same word.
Take a look at this.
I don't know. I get what he was trying to do. I get that it was very intentional. I just didn't like it. I didn't think it was successfully done. So biggest disappointment of the year, A Farewell to Arms. Biggest surprise. All Quiet on the Western Front. As well, I actually have a tie for the biggest surprise. David Copperfield. This is a 5-star book. David Copperfield is not. I had a 5-star experience with it because I listened to Richard Armitage's reading of it on audio. Amazing. Just amazing job. Phenomenal job. I loved hearing the story read to me. The book itself, though, is definitely closer to a 3-star for me. Easily a 5-star. And like I said, this I expected to find very dry and very boring, and I loved it. So good. So I expected to hate David Copperfield because I do not like Charles Dickens, and I figured his most autobiographical work, one of his longest books. I mean, he can write some long books, but it was almost 1,000 pages, incredibly long, literally from birth to almost death for this character. I thought I was going to hate it. So the fact that it was a 3-star book but a 5-star listening experience shocked me. So I'm going to say there's a tie for my 2 biggest surprises of the year. Favorite new author, either new to me or debut. Again, I don't read new books, so debut authors are not even on my radar. I would never know if I was reading a book that was a debut. But new to me was Kanai Minato, and the book was Confessions. So the premise of this book, and I think it's in my wrap-up from last month, the premise of this book, like middle school teachers, homeroom teachers' 4-year-old daughter is killed by some of her students. And at the beginning of the book, she knows exactly who did it. And she, on the last day of school, tells the entire class the story. And she never names them specifically, but she knows that the entire class knows now because of, easily defined contextual clues. And it's a story of revenge, but the intricacy of this revenge story, you think you know everything at the beginning of the book because now you know who the killers are. And then it starts to go back in time, and it actually goes forward in time and it goes back. So you start to go forward following now different students, sometimes the murders and sometimes not. And you start to actually see this bigger picture unfold of their interactions with classmates and the overall story of what actually happened, and not only what happened, but the real motivations. And every new perspective, you end up seeing this picture so much more clearly, but you're fooled every single time into thinking you already see the picture clearly. Just phenomenally done. And then you also think you know the revenge, but it's so layered.
Jesus Christ.
The teacher supposedly gets her revenge by outing the students to the class and just sort of letting, because she doesn't involve the police, and then she just retires and disappears. And you think you see it, you think you know it. This is a book that just subverts your expectations every step of the way in the most well executed way possible. And I absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait to get my hands on more from this author. Newest fictional crush, David Copperfield. I'm kidding. He's like the worst. No, I don't have a fictional crush. And also I don't think anybody's gonna dethrone Edmond Dante, the Count of Monte Cristo. But yeah, I don't have a new fictional crush this year, and it's definitely not David Copperfield. Newest favorite character. This one I kind of had to dig for, because even though I really enjoyed a lot of these books, I didn't really have like a favorite character that really stood out. But I think the one who entertained me the most possibly was Ford Prefect from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That is the alien who saves, is it Arthur Dent? From the destruction of Earth, and then they go on this crazy adventure. He's really funny. He's very dry, but because it's so ridiculous from the standpoint of the last human to survive Earth, it is really, really funny. So I would probably say the alien Ford Prefect from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy gave me the most enjoyment, I would say. Book that made you cry. I didn't have a lot of books that like really outright just made me sob, but the book There, from the phrase "there was no there," which, reading the title, I thought it was there, like comforting, but there's no there, which is also the second book this year that I realized I misunderstood the title, and it gives the whole book a new meaning. The other one being A Tale for a Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which is actually a tale for a time being. A time being like a thing in and of itself, not a tale for the time being, like in the meantime. Anyway, There by Tommy Orange. This is from a Native American author who is talking about the separate lives of Native American peoples who are somehow involved in a big powwow that is being organized, and how all of these disparate lives somehow end up interconnecting at this big powwow. And from the beginning of the book, this is not a spoiler, this is on the blurb, a tragedy happens at this powwow, and you see how all of these paths converge into this moment of horrific tragedy. The characters are very realistic. The author does not shy away from a lot of the struggles that the Native American population in the United States and probably other places, First Nations peoples, Indigenous peoples face, which is, trauma, generational trauma, displacement, not feeling a part of your larger country, not feeling exactly a part of your smaller community, alcohol and drug dependencies, broken families, so many things. It's done with delicacy and it's done with care, but it doesn't shy away or sugarcoat any of those things, and it was really beautiful. So I do recommend. I think I gave it a 4-star. I couldn't quite put my finger on why it wasn't a 5-star. There was just something missing. But There by Tommy Orange. Oh, book that made you happy. Oddly enough, Every Shade of Happy by a person I can't pronounce. Philida? I'm gonna go with Philida Shrimpton. This is the story of a young girl who is in her middle teens, and her mom, at the very beginning of the book, her mom's boyfriend, who they live with, decides he wants a big change in his life, and they no longer can live with him. And so they end up having to move in with her grandfather, who she's never met. Her mother and grandfather have been estranged ever since she was born out of wedlock. And so when she got pregnant, her dad didn't care for that, and he reacted very poorly. So she went and had the baby on her own, had her own life, and she's never brought her daughter back to meet her dad. So, but it follows the story of the teenager, but it's a dual perspective. So it follows her story, but it also does the perspective of her grandfather. This was so wholesome. This was so wholesome. His granddaughter is young and carefree and artistic, and she loves to use makeup to express herself. That's her art. So she'll draw with on her face and on her arms and on her legs. She wears these really colorful clothes, and he's very disapproving. He's very stern and doesn't like the shakeup in his life. And he watches his daughter slowly fade and fade and fade, and all that brightness and all that color just starts to turn gray because she's uprooted from her life. She's you know, missing all of her friends. She's being bullied in school. Her artistic self isn't welcomed at the school due to the dress code and the code of conduct. And so the life and the color literally starts to fade out from her, and he starts to realize that the same thing happened to him as a boy, and it motivates him because he doesn't want his granddaughter going through the same thing. So it talks about this budding relationship between grandfather and granddaughter, the communication struggles between generations, and specifically from the side of her grandfather. It felt so familiar because I had spent a lot of time with my grandfather towards the end of his life, and I could easily relate to the grandfather in the story because of that. When his routine is shaken up, he's very unsettled. He has no coping skills. He can't adjust easily, and so it displays as anger, but it's really confusion and fear and frustration. But they think he's just an angry old man, and when he communicates, he's very blunt, and he never is able to articulate what he really feels, but he's also never had practice at that, so he doesn't know how to articulate his feelings. And that's such a struggle because messages get crossed all the time, and he chides himself in his head every time that happens, and he's so hard on himself, but he doesn't know how to communicate with his granddaughter. And you see it from her perspective and then from his perspective, and you can see how much they want the love and respect from the other person, and they just keep getting wires crossed. It is the only book that I have ever read that I can think of that I liked the miscommunication trope because it was so well done. It was realistic. It was explained. It made so much sense, and the characters knew that there was miscommunication going on, and they worked at resolving it. It wasn't just, I said no to going out with you that night because, you know, I ended up in the emergency room with my best friend and I just didn't want to stress you out, but you thought I was out cheating on you. 300 pages later, we finally have a 20-second conversation to resolve it. Like, it wasn't that. So charming, so wholesome. I absolutely loved it. I expected very little from this book. I just picked it up because the cover was cute and the synopsis seemed like it might be something I would like, and I absolutely adored it. So, book that made me happy. Every shade of happy. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. Now this is an easy one. The Princess Bride. This is an anniversary edition that I got from my Schuler bookstore. Cover alone, binding alone, gorgeous. There's maps. There's a map. Look at this paper. I mean, this is how you do an anniversary edition of something. But beyond that, there's illustrations. These are some of the most interesting illustrations to just pore over. Look at that chapter. See if I can get to the one that I'm thinking of with Buttercup and Wesley. I probably won't be able to easily the way I'm holding it, but look at that. That's Fezzik. Oh, here's a good one. Look at that picture of Buttercup. And just by looking at the pictures, I know what the scene is. Now, I never read the book, but I have seen the movie like 800 million times. This is beautiful. I don't know that I'm gonna find a book anytime soon that is going to be prettier than this. And then finally, what books do you want to read by the end of the year? Yes, I read it last year. Is it any surprise I want to reread it? No, because I won't shut up about it. I plan to reread this again this year and fully annotate. However, that's not everything. I also want to finish all of these. These are the books for, is upside down? Yeah. These are the books for the Game of Tomes read-along. So we have The Awakening by Kate Chopin, Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, which is a reread for me, Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare, and Eugene Onegin, I don't know, I have to figure out how to pronounce this, by Pushkin. Have to read all of these this year for the book club. And then just from my own, this is the actual like real answer to the question. These are from my own shelves that I just want to read for pleasure. I have Imbolo Mboe's How Beautiful We Were. I want to get to this year, absolutely. Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. Dying to get to this one. And then finally, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is going to be a struggle because this is how I want to, this is like a project one. I want to start working in video games into my channel and the storytelling through video games. But I have so much planning still to do and like figuring out how I'm going to bring that in and not just do like one video and then drop it for another year because I'm so busy. So I want to get to this, but it is such a special project to me that if I can't dedicate the time and attention and energy to it that I want, I'm going to be holding off. So, but yeah, those are all of my books that I at least for sure want to read this year, plus so many more, so many more. And that's it. That is my mid-year book freakout tag. I will be posting the questions in the description below, so please feel free to answer any or all of the questions yourself, because I am dying to know how your reading has gone this year and what are your answers to these questions. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Please take care of others, and I'll see you in my next one.